The Golden Crane stood like a jewel in the middle of the city's financial district. All marble floors, gold-accented walls, and quiet money. The kind of place where the rich came to prove how rich they were. Inside, the chandeliers drip with light, reflecting off polished tables set with crystal glassware and folded linen so white it almost glowed. The air smelled faintly of jasmine tea and imported spices. At the far end, the staff lined up for the evening briefing. Waiters in crisp uniforms, chefs in spotless whites, hostesses with polite smiles that never touched their eyes. Among them stood Maya Ellis, clutching her order pad, her heart racing. Her black hair was neatly tied back, her uniform perfectly ironed, her shoes shining despite the long hours she'd spent on her feet. The manager, a tall man named Mr. Preston, scanned the lineup. All right, listen up. Tonight's VIP table is a high-profile group from Beijing. Mr. Liang, the Chinese billionaire investor. Be respectful. No mistakes. He paused, his eyes landing on Maya. Ellis, you'll be on that table. Maya blinked. Me, sir? You're our calmest one, he said, with a tight smile that wasn't quite a compliment. Just stay quiet, sir, politely, and smile. These men can make or break this restaurant's reputation. Maya nodded. Yes, sir. But inside, her stomach turned. She wasn't afraid of serving wealthy guests. She'd done that for years. What unsettled her was the way people like Preston spoke of them, as though they were gods instead of flawed human beings. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. Her mother's medical bills were due next week. The little apartment they shared needed rent. Her life, for now, was a rhythm of exhaustion and survival. The restaurant doors opened just before 8 p.m. Mr. Liang entered with his entourage. 6 men, all impeccably dressed, all laughing loudly in Mandarin. Their presence seemed to shift the air. Mr. Liang himself was in his early 50s. Silver hair slicked back, his wrist heavy with a gold watch. He had the confident gait of a man used to owning rooms and people. Maya greeted them with a professional smile. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Golden Crane. Mr. Liang glanced at her, one brief, assessing look, his lips curved in a half-smile that wasn't warm. He nodded curtly. Sit, he said to his companions. Let's see if this place lives up to its reputation. They took their seats, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. Maya moved efficiently, setting out glasses, placing menus, taking drink orders. Her movements were practiced, smooth, quiet, invisible, and that's how she preferred it, at least most days. In the kitchen, her colleague Lena whispered, Girl, you look nervous. You okay? Maya forced a smile. Just tired. But her hands trembled slightly as she carried the wine bottle back to the table. She could feel the weight of their eyes, their laughter. Something about it, that dismissive tone, made her chest tighten. She'd heard that laughter before, back in college, on trains, in offices. The laughter that said, you don't belong here. But she swallowed the bitterness. Tonight, she needed her paycheck more than her pride. When she returned to the table, Mr. Liang was mid-story, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. She caught every word. Back in Shanghai, he said, chuckling, even our street vendors speak better Mandarin than foreigners. I wonder if this waitress even knows what we're saying. Laughter erupted around the table. Maya kept pouring. Another man, round-faced, younger, added in Mandarin, She's pretty, though. Maybe we should teach her a few phrases. Mr. Liang smirked. I'll do you one better. If she can serve us in Chinese tonight, I'll give her $100,000. The table roared with amusement. Maya's hand froze for a fraction of a second before she regained control. She finished pouring the wine, set the bottle down carefully, and stepped back. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to pretend she hadn't understood, to just walk away. But something inside her snapped, quiet but sharp. She'd worked too hard, studied too long, been underestimated too often. She had spent 5 years at Beijing University, perfecting every tone, every idiom. She had once dreamed of becoming a professional interpreter, but life and responsibility had rewritten her dreams. Now, Here she was, mocked for being less, when she'd once been more. Mr. Liang noticed her silence and chuckled. See? Not a word. I knew it. More laughter. Maya turned, her voice calm and steady. In fluent Mandarin, she said, Liang Xianqing, would you like me to bring out the Bordeaux first, or shall I open the Shaoxing wine you ordered from Hangzhou? The laughter stopped instantly. Mr. Liang's mouth opened slightly, his expression blank. The other men exchanged stunned glances. One of them whispered, She speaks Chinese? Maya gave a polite smile. Yes, sir. I studied at Beijing Dashua, Beijing University. I used to live near Wadeaku. It's a lovely district, isn't it? She said it effortlessly, her tones perfect. Every syllable landed like music. The table went silent. In that silence, power shifted. Mr. Liang recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Ah, so you understand everything we said? Every word, Maya replied smoothly. Don't worry, sir, I'm not offended. I've learned that sometimes the loudest laughter comes from the deepest insecurity. His companions looked away, pretending to study their menus. The atmosphere had changed completely. For the first time that night, Mr. Liang looked genuinely unsettled. Maya continued her work, graceful and composed, while the men, once so confident, now whispered quietly, avoiding her gaze. The dining room around them buzzed faintly with a hum of conversations, but at that table, there was only silence and the clinking of glass. And for the first time that evening, Maya allowed herself a small, private smile, because she knew this night was far from over. For a long moment after Maya's words faded, only the hum of soft jazz filled the air. The waitstaff glanced toward the VIP table, sensing the tension but pretending not to notice. Maya stood straight, hands folded neatly before her apron, eyes calm. She had no desire to embarrass anyone further, yet she would not shrink back either. Mr. Liang cleared his throat. Impressive, he said in English this time, the faintest quiver in his voice. I did not expect that from a server. Maya's smile was gentle. People rarely expect much from servers, sir. That's what makes surprises possible. The older man's companion shifted uncomfortably. The one with the round face reached for his glass, knocking a spoon in the process. The metallic clink sounded like guilt. Mr. Liang gestured for her to continue pouring. Please, miss. Ellis, she supplied. Maya Ellis. Miss Ellis. He inclined his head, recovering a touch of composure. Your pronunciation is excellent. I suppose you lived in China? Yes, sir, she replied in Mandarin again, refusing to hide the fluency they had mocked. 5 years in Beijing. I was a translator for an art export company. My mother fell ill, so I came home. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps empathy, but pride masked it quickly. Then you know our saying, every man is his own teacher. Maybe I should thank you for the lesson tonight. It isn't necessary, Maya said softly. Respect is enough. When she turned to leave, the younger executives leaned toward their boss, whispering rapidly in Mandarin. Boss, you embarrass yourself, one muttered. She understood everything, maybe even what we said about... Mr. Liang silenced him with a look. He hated being the fool in any story, and right now, the entire restaurant was writing that story with their eyes. Across the room, a couple lifted their brows, clearly aware something extraordinary had happened. Mr. Liang took a long sip of wine, then set the glass down. Miss Ellis, he called. She paused mid-step. Bring us the chef's recommendation, he said, his tone clipped. And join us for a moment, if your manager permits. Maya hesitated. Waitresses did not join guests, especially not billionaires. But Mr. Preston, watching from the corner, gave a stiff nod. If a customer asked, she had to obey. She returned with quiet grace, placed a fresh bottle on the table, and stood beside him. Mr. Liang gestured to an empty chair. Please. I prefer to stand, Maya replied politely. What can I do for you, sir? He studied her face as though seeing her for the first time. You said you were a translator, he began. Why are you here? Maya's smile didn't falter, though something heavy pressed against her chest. Because translation doesn't pay hospital bills fast enough. Waiting tables does. The answer silenced even the air around them. Mr. Leong nodded slowly. Life demands strange sacrifices. He glanced down at his cufflinks. I started as a dishwasher in Guangzhou. People mocked my accent when I moved to Shanghai. I worked until no one could afford to mock me again. The confession surprised everyone, including Maya. I forgot what that felt like, he admitted, to be underestimated. Maya folded her hands behind her back. It's a feeling that never truly leaves you, sir. Some of us just learn to turn it into fuel. Mr. Leong exhaled, almost smiling. You remind me of my mother. She would have liked you. The younger men around the table exchanged uncertain looks. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. The arrogance that had filled their laughter earlier now looked foolish under the golden lights. When Maya left to fetch their entrees, whispers followed her, not cruel ones, but curious. Who was this waitress who spoke perfect Mandarin, who made a billionaire humble with a single sentence? In the kitchen, Lena grabbed her arm. Girl, what did you do? The manager's pacing like he's seen a ghost. Maya set the tray down and allowed herself one quiet chuckle. Nothing, Lena. I just spoke. Well, keep speaking, Lena said with a grin. The whole restaurant's rooting for you. Back at the VIP table, Mr. Leong seemed lost in thought. He toyed with his chopsticks, ignoring the murmured conversations around him. When Maya returned, he looked up immediately. Tell me something, he said. Do you miss China? She hesitated, then answered honestly. Every day. It was the first place that made me feel small and big at the same time. Small because of the crowd, big because I belonged somewhere new. That's a poet's answer, he murmured. Perhaps you were never meant to carry trays. Perhaps not, she said. But trays carry dreams sometimes. Until those dreams can walk again. He studied her for a long beat, then nodded. Fair. When dessert was served, the tension had softened. The younger executives even attempted awkward small talk in English. Maya responded kindly, switching languages with effortless grace. It became clear to everyone that she wasn't the evening servant anymore. She was at center. At one point, Mr. Preston approached the table nervously. Everything to your satisfaction, gentlemen. Mr. Leong gave him a rare smile. More than satisfaction. You have a remarkable employee. Preston blinked, unsure what to say. Yes, of course. She's, one of our best. When the manager retreated, Mr. Leong turned to Maya again. You said your mother is ill. What does she need? Time, Maya said softly. And care. The kind of care insurance doesn't cover. He tapped a finger on the table. Consider tonight a start. I intend to keep my promise. Her brows knitted. The $100,000 joke? His tone grew solemn. It won't be a joke. The words hung between them, unexpected and almost too heavy to grasp. Maya wanted to protest, but something in his expression stopped her. This wasn't pity. It was correction, the way a proud man tries to right his own wrongs. I don't need your money, she began quietly. No, he agreed, but the world might need what you'll do with it. Then he raised his glass and, in Mandarin, offered a toast. To humility, the most expensive lesson any man can buy. Maya lifted her tray slightly in acknowledgement. To respect, she answered, the only thing worth serving. The room applauded again, softly, but sincerely this time. And for the first time in years, Maya felt seen. Not as a server, not as someone surviving shift to shift, but as a woman who had reclaimed her dignity in the language of those who thought she couldn't speak. When the guests finally left, La Belle emptied like a receding tide. The chandeliers dimmed to a soft gold. The jazz faded to a whisper, and the scent of roasted duck and truffle butter hung faintly in the air. Maya was clearing the last plates from Mr. Liang's table when she noticed he hadn't left yet. The younger executives had gone, laughing nervously as they waved goodbye, eager to escape the awkward weight of the evening. But Mr. Leong remained seated, his back straight, one hand resting on a leather briefcase beside him. Miss Ellis, he said without looking up. She froze, a stack of plates in her hands. Yes, sir. He turned to face her, eyes calm but heavy with thought. "Sit with me for a moment. I believe we have unfinished business." Maya hesitated. It was well past midnight, and her shift technically ended an hour ago. But something in his tone, not commanding but human, made her stay. She set the plates down and sat across from him. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the dishwashers in the back. Then, without preamble, he said quietly, "I'm not proud of how I treated you earlier." Maya blinked. Of all the things she expected from the billionaire who had mocked her, an apology wasn't one of them. He went on, "I'm an old man who's forgotten how to listen. When you build an empire, people stop correcting you. You start thinking your jokes are wise. Your arrogance is charm, until someone reminds you otherwise." He met her gaze. "Tonight, that was you." Maya swallowed, unsure how to respond. "Sir, you don't owe me." "Yes, I do," he interrupted gently, "but not in the way you think." He opened the briefcase. Inside was a thick folder of documents, embossed with a silver logo, Leon Global Holdings. He pulled out a slim envelope and slid it across the table. Maya stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "A contract," he said simply. "A translator's position. Shanghai headquarters. Full-time, housing provided, health care included, and the starting salary." He smiled faintly. "Well, let's just say it's considerably more than what you make here." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "This can't be real," she whispered. "It is," he said. "And if you need proof, I can have my assistant call your manager tonight." Maya shook her head. "Why me? You don't even know me." Mr. Liang's eyes softened. "Because I saw something tonight that money can't buy. You didn't just speak my language. You spoke truth. And that's rare, even among the powerful." He leaned back in his chair. "I built my company from nothing. I washed dishes for 6 years before anyone called me. Sir, you reminded me of that boy tonight, the one who used to be hungry enough to learn every word of a foreign language just to prove he belonged. I'd like someone like that by my side again." Maya's throat tightened. "Mr. Liang, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he replied, almost pleading. "Say yes, and I'll arrange everything. Your mother's medical care, your flight, your work visa." The mention of her mother twisted something deep inside her. She thought of the small hospital room, the smell of disinfectant, her mother's weak smile each time she came home from a double shift. She thought of the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the way her hands trembled each time she opened them. And suddenly, the weight of her exhaustion broke through her composure. Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't meant to show. Mr. Liang didn't speak. He simply handed her a folded handkerchief. "You have the spirit of a fighter," he said softly. "Don't waste it waiting tables for men who will never learn your name." They sat in silence for a while after that. The restaurant felt like another world, a quiet stage where something miraculous had just happened. When Maya finally found her voice, it was barely above a whisper. "I don't want charity, sir." He smiled. "Then don't take it as charity. Take it as recognition. Or better yet, take it as an investment." "An investment?" "In you," he said simply. "You think I build a billion-dollar company without recognizing talent when I see it?" Her lips parted in disbelief. "You mean you're serious?" "As serious as the insult I gave you earlier, and as serious as the apology I now offer." He stood and extended his hand. "So, Miss Ellis, shall we rewrite the rest of the story together?" When Maya finally shook his hand, it felt unreal, as though the night had twisted time itself. Just hours ago, she had been a waitress scolded for serving too slowly. Now, she was being offered a life she'd never dared to imagine. She looked down at the contract again. The paper trembled slightly in her hands. It wasn't just ink and signatures. It was possibility. A door opening. "I'll need time," she said finally, "to think and to talk to my mother." "Of course," he said. "My car will be outside tomorrow morning at 9, whether you step into it or not. That's your choice. But I hope you do." He took his briefcase, bowed slightly, and left the restaurant. Maya remained seated long after he was gone, the envelope still in front of her. Outside, the night rain began to fall. Soft, cleansing, like the world exhaling after holding its breath. Back in the kitchen, Lena peeked out and saw her sitting there. "Girl, what are you still doing here? You look like you saw a ghost." Maya let out a shaky laugh. "Not a ghost," she said. "Just a chance." "What kind of chance?" "The kind you only get once in a lifetime," she whispered. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel trapped in her apron or defined by the word waitress. She felt powerful, not because of who had offered her something, but because of what she had earned: respect. The next morning, sunlight crept gently across Maya's apartment, spilling over a pile of neatly folded uniforms on the couch. Her mother's soft humming came from the bedroom, an old hymn she sang whenever she was in pain. Maya stood at the kitchen sink, staring at her reflection in the small window above it. Her apron hung over the chair, still damp from last night's rain. On the table beside her, the envelope lay untouched, pale white, sharp-edged, and impossible to ignore. She ran her fingers over it again and again, as if the answer might appear in the texture of the paper. Her mother, Lorraine, shuffled into the kitchen wearing her worn pink robe. "Maya," she said softly, "you're up early." "I didn't really sleep," Maya admitted, pouring tea into 2 chipped mugs. Lorraine smiled weakly. "Thinking about that man from last night?" Maya froze. "How did you—" "Lena called. Her mother said with a knowing grin, said the whole restaurant's talking about you. Said you stood up to some big billionaire and left him speechless." Maya laughed despite herself. "That part's true." "So?" Lorraine asked, lowering herself into a chair. "What did he say?" Maya hesitated. Then she slid the envelope across the table. Lorraine's brows furrowed as she opened it. Her eyes moved quickly across the printed lines. Offer letter, relocation package, translator position, salary, 6 figures. "Oh, Maya." Her voice broke slightly. "This is incredible." Maya sat down opposite her, folding her hands. "He said he wanted to hire me. In Shanghai. He'd cover your treatment, too." Lorraine's smile faltered. "Shanghai? That's halfway across the world." "I know." Lorraine's smile faltered. "Shanghai? That's halfway across the world." "I know." "And he'd pay for everything?" "Yes," Maya said softly. "Flights, housing, medical care, everything." For a moment, neither spoke. The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the background, marking each heavy second. Then Lorraine reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Baby, you have to go." Maya's throat tightened. "Mom, I can't leave you." "You can," her mother said gently. "And you should. I'll be fine. I've lived my life in this town, worked 2 jobs for 20 years. But you deserve to see the world again." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. "You always say that." "Because it's true." Lorraine smiled faintly. "When your father passed, I promised I wouldn't let your dreams die too. Don't you dare let me break that promise now." The clock struck 9. Outside, a black Mercedes idled quietly by the curb. Mr. Liang's driver stood beside it, checking his watch. Maya stood at the door, one hand gripping the handle, her suitcase waiting by her feet. She looked back one last time. Her mother sat at the table, her smile trembling but proud. "Go," Lorraine whispered. "Make them remember your name." Maya's lips curved in a teary smile. "I'll call you every day." "You'd better." They hugged tightly. A long, wordless goodbye filled with all the things neither dared to say. Then Maya stepped outside into the morning light. Inside the car, Mr. Liang's assistant greeted her politely. "Miss Ellis, good morning. Mr. Liang asked me to escort you to his office downtown for final paperwork." Maya nodded silently, clutching her bag. As the city blurred past a window, her mind raced. Fear, hope, disbelief all tangled together. The car stopped before a towering glass building, the kind of place that seemed to hum with quiet power. The receptionist led her to the top floor, where a panoramic view of the city unfolded behind sleek floor-to-ceiling windows. Mr. Liang stood there, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out at the skyline. "Maya," he greeted warmly. "You came." "I said I'd think about it," she replied softly. "And I did." He turned toward her, And I'll do it, she said, but on one condition. His brows rose slightly. Name it. I want my mother's care handled directly. No delays, no excuses. She's the reason I came back from Beijing. I won't leave her behind if she isn't safe. Mr. Liang nodded. Already arranged. She'll have a private nurse by this evening. All expenses covered by my foundation. Maya blinked. You already did it? I don't make empty offers, Miss Ellis. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Gratitude swelled in her chest like a storm she couldn't hold back. He handed her another document, this one smaller, simpler. It wasn't a contract this time. It was a handwritten note, in perfect Mandarin. She read it aloud quietly, to the woman who reminded me that wealth without respect is poverty in disguise. Thank you for teaching an old man humility. Welcome to Liang Global. Maya looked up, stunned. I don't know what to say. Then don't, he said kindly. Just keep being who you are. Later that evening, after signing the papers, Maya found herself standing on the company's rooftop garden. The wind played with her hair, carrying the faint scent of rain and the city below. The skyline glittered, alive with possibility. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine more, not just survival, but growth, adventure, purpose. She thought of the languages she'd learn, the bridges she could build between cultures, the pride her mother would feel. Behind her, Mr. Liang approached quietly. You remind me of my younger self, he said. When I first came to America, I was laughed at for my broken English. Now, I'm laughed at for forgetting where I came from. Life has a cruel sense of humor. Maya smiled softly. Maybe it just gives us second chances disguised as humiliation. He chuckled. Perhaps. They stood in silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. That night, as Maya packed her last few things, her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Liang. Flight confirmed. C2A. Shanghai awaits. She looked at the plane ticket, her name printed neatly beside the Liang Global logo. And for the first time in forever, she felt unstoppable. Shanghai shimmered like a dream the night Maya Ellis arrived. The skyline rose in ribbons of neon and glass, reflected across the Huangpu River like a city built twice, once of steel and once of light. As the car wound its way through the downtown streets, she pressed her forehead against the window and whispered, I'm back. The last time she had been here, she was a junior translator earning barely enough to survive. Now, she was returning as an executive consultant for one of Asia's most powerful conglomerates. The irony wasn't lost on her. At Liang Global headquarters, she was greeted by a woman in a sleek navy suit. Miss Ellis, welcome. The assistant said in crisp Mandarin, Mr. Liang is expecting you. Maya followed her through the vast marble lobby, past walls lined with art from every corner of the world. She caught her reflection in the glass, the same face, but different eyes. Eyes that no longer carried shame. When she entered the boardroom, Mr. Liang was already there, standing at the head of a long mahogany table. Welcome home, he said, smiling warmly. You're right on time. Thank you, sir, Maya replied. It feels good to be back. Good, he said, because we have work to do. The next 2 years. In the month that followed, Maya's name became synonymous with precision, grace, and quiet power. She managed cross-cultural negotiations, smoothed partnerships between Western and Chinese firms, and built a reputation as the woman who could bridge worlds with words. She worked hard, harder than she ever had before. But now it was different. Her paycheck wasn't survival, it was empowerment. Each month, she wired money home for her mother's treatment, and soon Lorraine was strong enough to start walking again. Her mother's video calls were always the highlight of Maya's evenings. Baby, I saw you on the news again. Lorraine would beam from her living room. My daughter, the translator to the billionaires. Maya laughed. Mom, it's just another interview. Not to me, it's not, Lorraine said. You worked for this. You earned this. One rainy afternoon, Mr. Liang called her into his office. He looked older, more thoughtful, the lines around his eyes softer now. Maya, he began, there's something I want to discuss. She sat down, curious. Of course. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, he said. My son will take over in 6 months. But before that happens, I want you to lead the new international division. Maya's breath caught. Lead it? Yes, he said, smiling. As director, you'll oversee cultural partnerships, language services, and philanthropic outreach. It's time you stopped translating other people's words and started writing your own. Her eyes filled with tears. Mr. Leong, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, he said. You did this yourself. I just opened the door. 6 months later, the day of the press conference arrived. The formal handover of power from Leong Sr. to Leong Jr. Maya stood backstage in an elegant black suit, reviewing her notes for her speech. She had never been one for public attention, but today was different. Today, she was standing where she once never imagined she belonged. As she adjusted her earpiece, one of the coordinators hurried over. Miss Ellis, the 4 investors from New York have just arrived. They're requesting a Mandarin translator. Maya frowned. We assigned one already, didn't we? Yes, the coordinator said nervously. But they're complaining she's too slow. They want someone more professional. Maya sighed and handed over her speech notes. I'll handle it. She walked toward the conference room and froze at the door. Sitting at the table, sipping an espresso with casual arrogance, was Mr. Preston, her old restaurant manager. He hadn't noticed her yet. His hair was grayer, his suit finer, but his smirk was the same, sharp, dismissive, predatory. The memory of that night at La Belle flickered through her mind. His scolding voice, the way he'd told her to smile more for the customers, the humiliation of being invisible. Now, he was the one waiting for her. Excuse me, she said in flawless Mandarin to the group. Stepping inside, all eyes turned toward her. Mr. Preston's smirk faltered as recognition hit him. Maya, he stammered. What are you doing here? She smiled politely. Good afternoon, Mr. Preston. I'll be assisting this meeting. The investors glanced between them, sensing tension but saying nothing. Maya moved to the head of the table, his old seat of authority, and opened her folder. She translated effortlessly, her voice calm and clear. Every word rolled off her tongue with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. Mr. Preston sat frozen, realizing she was not a waitress anymore. She was a director of the company hosting him. After the presentation ended, one of the investors shook her hand. You were remarkable, Miss Ellis. Leong Global is lucky to have you. Thank you, she replied smoothly. We believe respect builds stronger partnerships than money ever could. Her eyes flicked to Preston as she said it. He lowered his gaze, unable to respond. Later, as the guests left, Mr. Leong found her in the hallway. I saw what happened, he said, smiling. Poetic, isn't it? Maya chuckled softly, more like full circle. He nodded. You remind me of something my mother used to say. Life will test your humility twice. Once when you have nothing, and again when you have everything. Maya looked out over the skyline beyond the window, her reflection blending with the glittering city lights. I think I finally understand that. Mr. Leong rested a hand on her shoulder. Then you're ready for what comes next. That night, Maya sat by her office window long after everyone else had gone home. Rain streaked the glass, and the city pulsed below, alive, electric. She took out her phone and called home. Mom! Baby! Lorraine answered, her voice warm and steady. How was your big day? Maya smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. You remember that billionaire I told you about, the one who mocked me? Of course, Lorraine said. What about him? He's sitting in my office tomorrow to discuss a partnership. Her mother laughed. Oh, honey, I hope you make him sweat. Maya grinned, just enough to make him remember my name. When the call ended, she looked out at the glittering skyline once more. Somewhere out there, a waitress was finishing her late shift, dreaming of a better life. Maya hoped she would find her own Mr. Leong, or better yet, become her own. Because in the end, it wasn't just about revenge or respect. It was about transformation, about proving that dignity, once found, never leaves you again. And beneath the endless Shanghai lights, Maya Ellis smiled. a woman who once served tables, now serving the world. 3 years later, Shanghai was drenched in sunlight the morning of the Ellis Leong Foundation's grand opening. Outside the new headquarters, a tall, glass building etched with both English and Mandarin inscriptions, a crowd had gathered. Journalists, employees, and students from across the city waited eagerly for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The air buzzed with anticipation, and at the center of it all stood Maya Ellis, now a name spoken with respect across continents. Her sleek white suit reflected the morning light. Her mother's silver pendant, worn close to her heart, shimmered softly against it. On the stage behind her, a massive banner read, "Building Bridges Through Language, Compassion, and Equality." The foundation was her dream made real, an organization that provided education, language training, and medical support for underprivileged workers around the world. It was her way of turning one night of humiliation into a lifetime of healing for others. Before the ceremony began, Maya stepped aside to take a quiet call from the hospital in California. Her mother's voice came through the line, still strong and teasing despite her years. "Baby, I'm watching you on TV," Lorraine said proudly. "You look like a movie star." Maya laughed softly. "You'd say that even if I showed up in pajamas." "Of course I would," her mother chuckled. "You've earned this, sweetheart. Your father would be so proud." Maya's eyes softened. "So are you, Mom. You're the reason I'm here." Lorraine's tone grew tender. "Then promise me something, Maya. Never let success make you forget the girl who once carried trays with tears in her eyes." Maya smiled through the ache in her chest. "I won't, Mom. I promise." When she stepped back onto the stage, cameras flashed, and a hush fell over the audience. Mr. Leong, now retired but still sharp and dignified, waited beside her, holding a pair of golden scissors. His hair had thinned a little more, but his eyes glowed with quiet pride. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya began, her voice clear and steady. 3 years ago, I was a waitress in Los Angeles, serving tables and dreaming of something more. That night, I met a man who tested my dignity and taught me the value of never lowering my head again. She glanced toward Mr. Leong, who inclined his head with a small smile. He offered me a chance not out of pity, but because he believed respect is the foundation of all success. And today, together, we dedicate this foundation to every worker, every translator, every person who has ever been underestimated. Applause filled the courtyard. Maya continued, "Our mission is simple, to give others the tools to be heard in any language, in any country, because no one's words should ever be lost in translation." Mr. Leong stepped forward, took her hand, and together they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers. The cameras flashed and balloons soared into the sky. For a brief, perfect moment, everything felt whole. Later, after the crowd dispersed and the reporters left, Maya and Mr. Leong sat in the garden courtyard of the new building, a tranquil space filled with cherry blossoms and bamboo fountains. "You did well," he said, sipping tea. "Better than I ever could have imagined." Maya smiled. "You gave me the chance, sir. I just try to honor it." He chuckled softly. "Do you know why I really offered you that job?" She tilted her head. "Because I reminded you of yourself." "Partly," he said, "but mostly because you reminded me of who I used to be. Brave, hungry, unafraid to look power in the eye." He paused, watching the petals drift across the water. "I once humiliated someone just as I did you, a busboy who couldn't speak Mandarin properly. I laughed at him. The next week, he quit. I never saw him again, but I never forgot the look in his eyes." He sighed. "I think I saw that same look in yours, and I knew I had one last chance to make it right." Maya's throat tightened. "You did, sir, more than you know." As the sun began to set, Mr. Leong rose slowly. "I'm leaving for Singapore tomorrow," he said. "Time to spend my last years quietly. But I'll be watching your work, Miss Ellis." She stood as well, bowing slightly. "You taught me more than any school ever could." He smiled. "Then my debt is paid." They parted there, beneath the falling blossoms, mentor and student, equals at last. A year later, the Ellis Leong Foundation had become an international success. Branches opened in Kenya, Canada, and the Philippines. Maya traveled constantly, giving talks about empathy in leadership and dignity in work. One day, while organizing files in her Shanghai office, her assistant entered carrying a small parcel. "It arrived for you, Director Ellis," she said. "No return address, just this note." Maya frowned slightly but opened it. Inside was a thin leather journal, and on the first page, written in graceful handwriting, were the words, "Dear Maya, if you are reading this, I am gone, but I wanted you to know that meeting you was the greatest profit of my life. You reminded me that power means nothing without compassion, and that respect is the only true currency. Keep building bridges, my daughter of two worlds. Liang Wei." Maya's eyes blurred with tears as she closed the book and pressed it to her chest. That evening, she stood again on the rooftop terrace overlooking Shanghai, the same place where she had once stood, terrified and uncertain. Now the city lights shimmered below like 1,000 unspoken promises. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Mr. Liang, for seeing me before the world did." A soft gust brushed her cheek, and for a moment she could almost hear his voice again. "To humility, the most expensive lesson any man can buy." Maya smiled through her tears. Somewhere below, in a small restaurant, a waitress served a table of businessmen, and when they laughed at her accent, Maya hoped she'd remember this story, that one day respect would return to her too, doubled, because the world was always listening. It just needed the right voice to speak. And Maya Ellis, once the humiliated waitress, had become that voice.